Dr. Ragsdale, can you speak a bit more about what community building looks like? I know this is part of your background. Churches, I think, can find themselves siloed in their work. And I'll name my bias that I don't believe that's who we're called to be as people of God or even as people of this earth. Can you share perhaps how we might push against that tendency? How do we build community together?
So this question is a deeply spiritual question, and I struggle with it. So on one hand, my current understanding of my Buddhist practice is that pushing against something sometimes can make it stronger. So I try to think about my ability to name the silo that I am in and reach out to others to hear how they see the silo. Do they experience it as a silo? And by reaching out and understanding how we think about the silo, then I can begin to build the community that serves people who are part of that community. Because once we start talking to each other, it's no longer a silo anymore. Because now we are in the sort of same space. And I came to this understanding because of my long standing with Walden for 16 years as first as a contributing faculty member and then associate dean. And this was a distance learning environment. So a lot of my thinking about building community has to do with how do you do that through distance. And I think asking other people how they experience the techno bubble, and that's what I described it, that we were all in a techno bubble. And because of my positioning, I could see how we were, like the faculty members were like, well, when I go in the classroom, I do dun da 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 da. The student would say, well, I come here and I do da 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 da. And each of those, the professors and the students would talk about this feeling of isolation and alienation that they felt in this techno bubble. And so I explained to them, yeah, I feel like I'm part of the techno bubble. People, oh, you do too. Yes, I do too. So then now you can see that we have a common language of understanding our siloness. And what I was trying to achieve and what I try to achieve is like, how do we create an inclusive environment so that people feel, although they may be in this bubble, can they feel included? And then how do I then take that feeling of inclusion and then how does that inclusion serve others? I want to say a little bit about bias. Bias is often a barrier or a roadblock to listening to others. So there were times when I saw African Americans and they were like, well, you're Black just like me. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, there may be aspects of my Blackness that we share, but there may be other aspects of my Blackness that we don't. So tell me more about how you experience your Blackness. So, and this is the challenging thing in our society because of the binaries that we consistently place. We say, man, women, Black, white, we have all of these sort of dualistic binary ways that we think of each other. But I think what most of us want and need is a sense of being listened to, understood, and respected. We don't have to agree, but I think that each of us wants to feel like that the way they think, the way they're moving towards whatever that they are open to it, and then that you're open to it, and then from there, I think we can begin to create the world that we want to live in with each other.
No, I really appreciate that. And it is a spiritual question. The Christian tradition has a phrase where two or more are gathered, right? I am there in the midst. And those who are not of a Christian tradition will also appreciate that anytime when people come together under a common goal with hopes and with well wishes, it can lead to good. So yeah,
And
that's
I think,
great.
can I say
Please,
one other
please,
thing?
please.
Yes, we come together for the common good. But human beings, and this is what my Buddhist practice has taught me, they also bring their suffering.
Yeah.
Whatever shape or form that is, there's a form of that we all bring a form of suffering with us.
Yeah.
And the faith traditions or spiritual traditions recognize this suffering. And I think in many ways, I think the churches can play such a strong leadership role in addressing this suffering, particularly around racial injustice, for example. I think churches play a deep role in creating spaces where their actual people coming to church are reflective of that community.
Yeah.
Through acknowledgement of the racial injustice and suffering people experience, not just people of color, but white people are also robbed of their humanity by not acknowledging the suffering that they have been made to sometimes perpetuate in systems without their awareness. So
Yeah.
it's not just about people of color, it's also looking and helping white people to understand that their lives have been protracted lives because of this not looking and thinking about the suffering and distancing oneself from that suffering in some way.
Mhm.
The systems don't change then because, systems change because there's an openness and understanding, the connection with these systems
Right.
that
That's
we're
right.
born into.
Yep. 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 Yeah, we're born into them without our choosing, and yet there's so much impact that we can have as we continue to become more aware and know our roles in what is taking place. Yeah.
And Isabel Wilkerson uses this great analogy of an old house, and somehow you bought this old house, but you didn't create the big hole in the floor,
Right.
but it's still your house, and you have to fix it. You can't avoid it. I
That's
like
right.
that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a psychologist friend who's fond of the phrase, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And that helps. That tracks for me. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.